this debt, this destruction.
Global news impacts us.
We have to change the way we live.
This is why we need independent media.
Hello and welcome to Hardlens Media's Civically Minded. I'm your host, Lainie Petersen. I am here with my co-host, Mr. Daniel Lepker, Mr. Kit Cabello, and we got Faves behind the board doing a great job for us today. As you can imagine, I think we have a lot to talk about.
Oh, yes, we do.
We have a few things to talk-
Pretty calm few days.
Hey, look, guys, nothing happened. Calm down. Calm down. Calm down. Nothing's going on.
But we have to acknowledge the people who are keeping us on the air. We wouldn't be here if it wasn't for these folks. So, Kit, can you take this away?
Oh, absolutely. I got also another special announcement, too, for our viewers and subscribers. But first and foremost, shout out to our Patreon supporters. You guys are the main heart and soul to what we do here, as well as everyone else. We know times are tough, but thank you so much, Patreon support. Shout out to Charity Tyler, Anna Mars, Jackie Peguero. I hope I said your name right. Please message me if I didn't say it right. Dustin Price, Richard Jeffries, Ryan, Elephants on Coke, Alexander Aldridge Jensen, Dap DE Vegan, Bonnie Cartwright, Karen Rivera, Katrina Safran, Gray Walker joined third party, Cheryl Short, and Angie C. You guys are our honorary Patreon supporters. Again, we would not exist without you. Also, major announcement tomorrow at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time on the Hardlens Media YouTube channel, my interview with activist and NFL football player Justin Jackson will premiere. Tune in tomorrow, 2 p.m. It will be YouTube premiere, so it's something you want to watch live. It'll be at 2 p.m. Central Standard Time, so adjust your clocks and check it out on our YouTube channel. There we go.
Well, I want to begin my show. Normally, I tend to focus on regulatory state, a little bit about the media, a little about the stories that you don't hear about, but it would be kind of remiss of me not to remark on the events of the past, 36 hours. Things got very strange yesterday. They became extremely strange. I woke up, I had a list, my to-do list. I operate on a to-do list because I'm a freelancer. I've got this, I've got 2 other shows that I contribute to. So I have to operate on my to-do list. I don't think much got done on my to-do list yesterday. Every time I thought I might, things would be okay, I would check online, and I think it was at the point where I saw the half-naked man with a painted face and 2 dead animals on his head sitting in the chair belonging to the president of the Senate that I decided to kind of give up. As I've pointed out to these guys, there's been a lot of jokes about Nicolas Cage making off the movie when he made up with the Declaration of Independence, and people have been talking all day today saying, well, clearly it would not necessarily be that difficult if this is the level of security that 1/3 of our federal government gets to enjoy. So I thought I feel like I had to say something. I thought about writing a statement, and I decided y'all deserve better than that. We are YouTube, and this is live and interactive, or reasonably interactive, so y'all deserve better than me writing a statement, a canned statement. So I'm just going to say a few things here. I turn 52 next month. I was born in 1969. That was the year that astronauts landed on the moon. My parents kept me up as a little baby to watch that. They knew I wasn't going to remember it, but it was that important to them that I be there for that historic moment. We also know that moment was nationalistic. There have been other astronauts from other, Russia, the Soviet Union had been up there, and we wanted to keep that for ourselves. Christian rock pioneer Larry Norman, and those of you who think that white evangelicalism has always been about conservative politics weren't there when Larry Norman was doing some of his music, because he had a song, and one of the lyrics goes like this: "You say we beat the Russians to the moon, I say you starved your children to do it." At that time, we had a nationalistic, it was a great achievement, it was a great human achievement. Landing on the moon and coming back and surviving, that was a great human achievement, but it was politicized. During that time also, the U.S. was expanding its a toxic global influence. Instead of being a world leader, under the cover of being a world leader, the United States was involving itself in foreign wars, foreign nations, toppling governments, and was doing horrific things as covert operations. I don't remember the moon landing, although I do have memories of when I was very young, but my earliest memory of anything outside my immediate family was Watergate. And what I remember was everybody becoming very upset. There was palpable tension. I mean, we knew that something was going very, very wrong at that point. And one of the things that exposed Watergate, of course, was journalism. We had the relatively open and free press we have here, although I would note that the newspaper that exposed this was part of Operation Mockingbird, which was a CIA operation to secure neoliberal interests over genuine leftist politics or policies. Now, I'm not saying that I necessarily agree with those policies, but the reality is that our free press that did expose Watergate and showing our dysentery-encrusted hiney to the whole world was also part of an operation that was anything but press freedom. And I think we need to keep that in mind as well. I bring all this up because this presidency has been absolutely absurd. It has been a three-ring circus. We don't talk about it much on the show just because we also think that it is, while on one hand, yes, our dysentery-covered hiney continues to be exposed, the reality is that the press has been able to focus on the three-ring circus and ignoring the abused individuals outside that tent. And the abuse and the crimes that are going on there while everybody is focusing on that circus. And I am extremely disturbed by what I saw yesterday. That should never have happened. It was the fact that I'm hearing reports that the mayor of Washington, D.C. had told the Capitol Police to stand down a few days beforehand. There's going to be a lot of finger pointing, and I think an investigation has to be done. How transparent or accurate it's going to be, I don't know, but this has to be investigated. At one point, one of the congresswoman from Washington State, or a congresswoman from Washington State, noted that the security inside the chambers were not able to lock the doors, so they were using furniture to barricade those doors. This is not how you keep one branch of government safe.
I'm sure the chairs and everything was heavy. So
yeah. But this is what happened, and it should never have happened. It is very fortunate, as far as I am concerned, that so few people actually did get hurt. We had one woman who was shot and killed, and we had 3 other people who died of medical emergencies. My guess is that many of them may have had heart attacks because if you looked at some of those people, it wouldn't be all that surprising. The reality is that something very awful here happened in this country. It was absolutely disgraceful, but we are already seeing the spin. And the spin is happening online. It is happening in the media. We have automatically conspiracy theories have risen up. Conspiracy theories got those people into the Capitol building. And the conspiracies will keep this story, this narrative afloat that they all believed in. And it will also just serve as another circus to distract the people of this country who are not willing to look at the fact that we have brought in we have elected a highly competent group of people who are going to continue policies that have already put this country into a position where a clown like Donald Trump was elected, and number 2, people are believing these conspiracy theories because they would rather not believe the truth, that the American way is a sham, that our freedoms are simply a drug, they are an opiate of the people, And that is what is keeping us calmed down in this country, or keeping us from actually truly revolting. And it is revolting. It is revolting to know this and to see this. So I'm going to say a couple of things because we do need to move on. But I'm going to say this. Caitlin Johnstone, the journalist from Australia, the Contrarian, Edward Snowden have all brought up the fact that Donald Trump, the President of the United States, the legitimately elected, and I want to point out he was legitimately elected, President of the United States, has been denied his social media presence. This may or may not be a good idea given what happened yesterday. We're in such uncharted territory at this point. I don't know what to say. But I will say this. If you don't think, it's not going to stop there, okay? We've now had a situation where a world leader has had his main form of communication with his people, with the people of his country and other countries, cut off. This can happen again. This can happen to other world leaders. Moreover, it can happen to anybody. We're going to see at this point, in my opinion, a significant amount of censorship of things that are going on, what's going on online. Online censorship will become more rampant and more pernicious, and we will see greater levels of conspiracy theories rising up as a result.
Yep.
So what I'm going to say is this. I have said this before on this show, and I will say it again. 2021 is not the magical year for any of us. The fact that there is a vaccine and the fact that there is a new administration coming in do not resolve the long-standing problems that exist in this country. I don't like being right, but in this case I am. And we've already seen it. We're 6 days in. 6 days in this happens. The other thing that I'm going to say is that there must be a renewed interest and support in the institution of the press, and I'm including legacy media. I'm talking print media, newspapers and magazines, newsletters, however you want to put it. I am talking about radio. I am talking about broadcast radio, broadcast television. Things that have a much stronger, they've been weakened, and there's been a great deal of disinvestment. We've talked about on the show how newsrooms have had their funding taken from them, where newspapers are no longer able to sustain proper newsrooms with fact checkers and professional editors and trained journalists, whether they've gone to journalism school, whether they apprenticed as cub reporters. I don't particularly care. There's too much over-reliance on internet sources and on freelancers, and I say this as a freelance writer myself. A professional journalistic operation requires investment and interest, and at this point, we have to look to these legacy institutions, and we need to renew and reinvigorate them. That is going to have to happen if we are going to survive as a nation. I will also say one more thing here. Be very cautious over today, over the next several days, over the next weeks, when you start hearing people say it's time to begin the healing process. It's time to start healing. When somebody is running around who doesn't really have a whole lot of skin in the game, runs around and starts talking about now it's time to come together and to heal and to heal and to heal, what they're asking is we want to cover things up. We want to smooth things over. I'm going to tell you a few things about wounds, injuries. Many wounds and injuries, it's not safe to stitch them up. You stitch them up, all you're going to do is trap the bacteria, the infection in there. And it may look pretty for a while, but eventually it's all going to come out and the person may very well die from toxicity. This is not a time for healing. This is a time for us to open up these wounds to the air. And to let that process, the healing process, happen because of exposure, not because somebody wants to smooth something over. Mm-hmm. I hope you understand that I think everybody here at Heartlands, we love and appreciate those of you who have supported what we are doing. We've got a long way to go in being able to go back to doing original journalism. We want to be able to do that. We want to use our voice for good, and we know we do a lot of commentary. We try to bring stories to your attention. We would like to be able to do more for you. And I know that there are many other independent journalistic organizations here in Chicago and around the country and around the world that could absolutely use your support and help. I would also suggest that this is a good time when you support these smaller organizations. You may also be helping to train up those reporters and journalists who can move on to legacy media, these larger organizations, and bring integrity into these positions. There is a vigorous need for renewal in this country, and it will not happen by premature calls for healing. So. I'm going to move on unless anybody has anything else they want to say.
I think you said everything.
Wonderfully.
Yeah, you said everything that needed to be said. I'm against censorship, but well said, Lainie. Well said. Let's move on to
We're going to move on, though, because we've got some very interesting stories this week, many of which have to do with the media.
I was going to say that even though all of this is true and needs to be said, we still got to tell you guys other stuff that's happening.
Yeah, we do. First of all, I want to begin with something. This is from the National Consumer Law Center. You can check out a link. There's a PDF in the show notes. Do read this, and if you can, either send it to people who you know, print it out, give it to folks in your apartment building or to your relatives. It explains what's going on with the most recent stimulus payments. So some people are getting that direct deposit. Other people are receiving either checks or debit cards. And what's been said is, the IRS has said, is that some people who may have gotten checks last times are getting debit cards this time, and vice versa. The problem is that the debit cards are coming out through a third-party debit card company.
Oh, no.
And so what's going to be happening is you'll be receiving the card in the mail. It's coming from, I believe it's MetaBank. And it is not a scam. And this is something that's going to confuse, I think, a lot of people if they're not expecting this debit card, because there are a lot of scam operations that send out, either they are credit card companies that are sending out fake credit cards and hoping of getting you to apply for a real credit card, or they will send out a card that looks like a credit card, and they will offer you the opportunity to buy merchandise at inflated prices and at inflated interest rates. That's not what this is. This is not a scam. So
just to jump in super quick, I've actually gotten 2 of those calls in just the last 3 days. I get a lot more spam calls than that, but specifically, it's guys, keep an eye out.
Yeah. So you will receive this from MetaBank. It will be coming in from Omaha, Nebraska. The card will be, there's also information from the National Consumer Law Center of how you can use it without having to pay exorbitant fees. You will be able to use it at a surcharge-free ATM in the Allpoint network. This includes Target, Walgreens, CVS, Kroger, Safeway, Winn-Dixie, and Circle K. There is an ATM locator that you can use if you do not have access to some of those stores. You may be able to use this card, for example, if you go to pay for your groceries at a grocery store, put it in as a debit card. If they ask for cash back, you can usually get the cash back without having to pay a fee. That's not true at all stores, but many stores do have that option for you. Also, you can request a Money Network check, so you can actually write a check on that card and write out the paper check and make a payment using that paper check. If you accidentally threw out the card or believe you threw out the card, you can call 800-240-8100. And they will send out a replacement card for free. Also, the Consumer Law Center is recommending that you hang on to the card, because if the $2,000 stimulus, which is apparently back on the menu,
We'll see.
We'll see.
They may be able to use this card to deposit your funds. So I'm letting folks know about this, but this is, again, the sort of thing, please do not make the assumption that everybody you know is as internet savvy as you are. Get this information to them. The people, particularly older people, they just don't know what's happening. They may not understand what's going on, and they are bombarded with information, and they don't always know what to believe. You can show them this National Consumer Law Center. It's a reputable organization, letting you know.
Is this being mailed out to senior citizens, and when is this being mailed out?
Who's prioritized on this?
Okay.
Yeah.
At this point, the IRS.gov, you can go to IRS.gov and you can look up the status of your payment. Okay, there is no, as far as I know, there's not, nobody's being set. Yeah, they're not prioritizing it by age or anything. The issue is that you can't, you were not able to change your payment method. So if you were already receiving your funds, you received your last stimulus, that $1,200 that was supposed to last for 10 weeks.
Yeah.
I stretched it out, made it work.
Yeah. If you got it by direct deposit, they were going to deposit, to the same bank. If you received your stimulus by check or by debit card that last time, you will receive either a check or a debit card. This time, it's not clear, though, which one you're going to get, which is why you have to be watching your mail.
I see. And so that would be, and then because everyone else and their grandmother is starting a business to try and give you a fake one, obviously check our show notes to get more information on this.
I'm
Make
gonna
sure you get it right.
I'm gonna have to print that out too.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to keep an eye out too. As I don't know what we're getting. It's like, government hasn't figured out. I don't know what they're doing, but they have figured out apparently.
Yeah, because again, I'll probably talk to you. I want to actually talk to you about this after the show. Then,
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
all right. Yeah,
But this is the sort of
because I have
thing-
a personal question I want to bring up.
Again, you could print this out, and if you're in a building that has a bulletin board, tack this up. Tack this up on the bulletin board. If there is a laundromat or a coffee shop where people are going in and out and they have got a board, tack this up so that people can see what's going on. I had no idea they were moving so fast this time. I mean, they've moved really fast to get those stimulus checks out, which I'm all about, although $600.
Don't spend it on one place.
Yeah. Particularly, if you're trying to pay off your rent that's in arrears because now it's okay for your landlord to have you evicted.
Ooh, I paid off 1/10 of the average rent debt that people have that have rent debt on this. Also, I want to. This also covers something I was covering the other day about how your H&R Blocks and TurboTaxes are also getting their hands on all these checks as well and deducting what they feel is right. And Oopsie seems to be going through exactly that as well.
Yeah.
So
Sorry about that.
Yeah, that
Oopsie.
what's happened is that apparently some of these if you have electronically filed through some of these for-profit tax preparation companies, in some cases people aren't getting the stimulus at all, or it's going to the wrong bank. And what you can do is you can apply for a tax credit when you file your tax return.
don't worry, that's really easy to do in America. I promise.
Yeah. All right, moving on. I want to update on some of these very interesting stories from the FCC that I've been focusing on. Many of you remember a couple weeks ago, I was reporting that the FCC was restructuring its fee policy, and it was attempting to adjust fees to accommodate what they believe the actual cost of labor is in processing FCC applications. I technically don't really have a problem with this, except that they've decided to go after ham radio operators. Now, again, I'm going to repeat this for folks who were not there for the show. Those of you who were there for the show, please bear with me. Ham radio operators are not just a bunch of hobbyists. They are people who are frontline workers during disasters and emergencies. We know that cellular communications, television stations, the internet, they are very easily go down in disaster situations. In fact, in Nashville, with the explosion that happened recently, it was in front of the AT&T building. 911 went down. There was a whole lot of telecommunication that went down. Ham radio operators on a volunteer basis are routinely deployed by local, state, federal governments to provide communications assistance at these times. This is absolutely critical. Now, this is a group of people, about 750,000 in the U.S., who volunteer their time. They're not hired to do this. They volunteer their time to do this kind of work. And they are also largely self-governing. The FCC regulates and licenses the ham radio operators, but hams basically they have their own clubs. They put together their licensing exams. They give the exams. It's $15 to take the exam. You can take up to 3 different tests depending on your proficiency at that time, and you can get your ham license. Ham radio is a very reliable means of communications. It is not merely a hobby. So to charge these people who are preserving an extremely important method of communication, who volunteer their time, who are largely self-governing and self-regulating, to charge them $50 for a license is just beyond the pale. So apparently, ham radio operators got a little annoyed. Now the FCC is saying they're going to take down the fee to $35, which they feel more accurately represents the cost of processing an application. This, of course, makes me wonder where they got the $50 figure. Why all of a sudden, when you get complained that, oh, I think you're right, this is the actual, we miscalculated beforehand.
How dare
This
they?
is about as straightforward an application as you're going to get. Everything has been done. They're just forwarded the application. You give the person their call number, and they've got a license that's good for 10 years.
Okay, so again, here's the thing. Like, I know a lot of people may not be aware of ham radio, or they might understand it, make jokes about it. But like for a lot of communities, these radio operators are fundamentally important. And Heartlands Media, we have our origin on radio. And again, $50. Who was the genius that came up with that? And second of all, $35. I say bring it down to 20.
I say don't charge the licensing fee.
There we
They're
go.
already paying for the exam. The ham radio operators are self-regulating. Don't charge a fee for people who are being trained in an important skill, and so that they are prepared to carry out an essential service in times of need in communities. Just stop it. We need more ham radio operators in this country, not fewer. And we have seen, we've seen repeated assaults on public order. We have an increased number of weather-related disasters which interfere with communications. And as I think, very frankly, we're going to see more issues with public order. At this point, we need people who are able to use a highly reliable form of communication, and we cannot rely on professionals. Professionals need to be doing their jobs elsewhere. Let trained amateurs handle this. Did you know that all the astronauts on the space station, they are ham radio operators?
Interesting.
Whoa.
Yes. And in fact, if you get a certain level of license with ham radio, you can talk to the folks on the internet, on the space station. You can also bounce your signals off the moon.
Okay. So here's what's great about Heartlands Media. You learn something new all the time, especially here on Lainie Show. Hashtag like, comment, share, and subscribe to Heartlands Media.
The other thing is that, for example, the Doomsday airplanes, and these are the airplanes that are equipped to essentially create an Oval Office in the air in case of a nuclear attack. They have ham radio equipment on them, along with a telex machine. All these old school legacy communication methods, because they're reliable. They're over 100 years old in the case of radio, and they're all equipped with that equipment. And so again, this is an art and a science and a technology that is used regularly today, that is relied upon by public safety officials at every level of government, and we need to encourage it, not discourage it, by charging additional fees.
You know what I'm going to say? I've been convinced that if you're a ham radio operator and you are put into service to help in a disaster, the government should reimburse you for your time at about $15 an hour. You know what? Let's go with the FCC, $35 an hour for your invaluable service that no one else can do, that saves lives, which probably, I don't know, that sounds like something that we should compensate.
One other thing too, radio, it's more important than you realize. And look, we got to preserve some of these old technologies. I was not aware of it, but at the end of the day, praise the Messiah.
Absolutely.
That's
All
my
right.
40K reference. Got to get one in every show.
All right. So you've also been paying attention.
Real quick, sorry. We actually do have a YouTube super chat as well. Za Worldo mentions in $5 YouTube super chat, California EDD froze 1.4 million unemployment accounts. Thank you so much for the super chat, but that's some real sad news.
I will be looking into that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I've heard nothing good about what's going on in supposedly blue states.
Yeah.
It's as you know, when both wings, again, it's, hey, I'm diabetic, I gotta be safe. One guy, hey, I got Coke, try this. Hey, I got Pepsi, try this. Probably not helpful.
Two wings, same bird.
There we go.
Another story that I've been kind of following
I'm sorry. One more thing. I gotta throw this out there because Heller is our mod. Fun fact: ham radio contains no actual ham.
So it's kosher?
I just had to put that out there. I couldn't resist.
I've been reporting on the issue of pirate radio stations, and the big report that I did, of course, were 2 Haitian Creole language stations in the Boston area that were harangued off the air by the FCC. They were both facing massive fines. Those fines were reduced, but in one case, the station operator was required to have all of his equipment destroyed, and he had to bring a certificate from a recycling center showing that all of his equipment was destroyed. This happened despite the fact that people in those communities very much valued these Haitian Creole stations. Local politicians were on the stations. Local businesses advertised, which indicated there was a demand for this. Even though it sounds absurd, why is anybody into pirate radio station when you can podcast or even do live streams all you want online with free tools? Well, the reality is not everybody is online. And very clearly, there are people who want either the anonymity of being on the radio or the cost effectiveness of listening to the radio. That's what they are going to want. So then I pointed out that there has been a recent increase under the Pirate Act of the desire to continue going after pirate radio stations. Now, the situation is getting, in my opinion, a little bit more amusing because the Commission, FCC's Enforcement Bureau Chief Rosemary Harold is approaching Congress and wants $11 million to fund the Pirate Act so they can continue going after pirate radio stations, noting that the whack-a-mole approach to pirate radio stations isn't working. Now, I'm going to suggest something here. If your whack-a-mole game isn't what it ought to be, maybe you need to get out of the arcade.
Oh, well said.
Get out of the arcade, get into the real world, and get your field agents, and you got plenty of them, to start going to the pirate radio station owners and talking to them. Why are you doing this? Why are you putting yourself at risk? Why are you going? We all know that what you see here on our shows, for example, does not represent a fraction of the work, the time, the trouble that goes into doing this sort of thing. I can tell you, if they're running pirate radio stations, they're putting a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of effort, and taking a lot of risk. You ask them, why are you doing this? Why can't you just podcast? Why aren't you streaming online? Why aren't you buying time at a local radio station? You can do so very cheaply. Why aren't you doing any of this? And then you might get some answers. And you might they might be able to hear from these people, and they're going to say, well, we're trying to serve a community, and we are, the internet's not going to work for us, and we're maybe using a foreign language that they don't want, that local radio stations don't want on their air because it doesn't fit with their market niche. That makes a great deal of sense. There are dozens of reasons why people are continuing to operate the pirate radio station, and instead of persecuting these people or attempting to whack them, you might want to consider, opening up radio bands to local community organizations, to saying, hey, we're going to work with you. We're going to do some education here. We're going to help you go legit. Many years ago, when Hurricane Katrina happened, I was at a meeting of commissioners from the contracting construction industries. And what the commissioners from Louisiana said were going on is that they had a lot of unlicensed contractors working in the area. That was absolutely necessary because of the devastation that was going on. And they said our approach was education, not enforcement. We would talk to the contractor, we'd talk to the construction boss, and we'd say, okay, you're not licensed, you shouldn't be doing this. Here is an application form. Here is what you need to do. Now, I've got my real concerns about unlicensed contractors putting up buildings. I mean, there's a public safety issue there, but they saw the urgency of the situation, all right? I'm saying here to the FCC, how about getting a little bit more creative? The one thing I've accused Joe Biden of is not thinking that he's a bad man, but that he is a man who is lacking in imagination. I'm going to extend this also to the FCC. if people are doing the pirate broadcasting, there is a good reason for it. Send your agents out to talk to these people, to find out what's going on, and help them revive local media by, making licensing fees affordable, providing education and support as people set up legitimate community radio stations that serve niche communities, particularly those who cannot easily access the internet.
That's all seems quite reasonable, but we are, of course, not living in a reasonable time. I think that, and it's like you've also introduced me to that to even become a legitimate under current standards radio operator, you have to wait for like the FCC to go, yeah, this is the right decade to issue new bandwidth, because otherwise you have to like buy out a previous station. You've also pointed out that most of the bandwidth that we have, because we have newer technology, can be radically compressed, so you can fit a lot more stations in these anyway. And we're even going to try and apply once eventually they open up for an FM slot, because you're right. It's like, what if the internet's down? Well, at least we still have something. What if Comcast craps out like they tend to do a lot of times? Well, at least we'll have something. And I think that's, it's always worth diversifying where you're at. And I think that in this case, we shouldn't be going after people that are, what I thought was pretty important in America, offering a service that people want.
Yep. I'm just going to keep my comments short on this, and that is, there's reasons why people are setting up their own radio stations. There's a reason why people are speaking out. There's a reason why YouTube channels like this, I know it's different than radio, but YouTube channels like ourselves are here as well. It's because what we're getting from traditional media, or from the corporate media, isn't working. And people want to know what is going on, what is happening. And, I don't like censorship, and I don't like the jackboot, coming down on people's necks when they're trying to do the right thing to help their community.
Yeah. Here's the thing. I'm not opposed to the idea of removing pirate radio stations when they are interfering with other stations that are legitimately on the dial, when they are interfering with transmissions, aviation transmissions, or emergency medical services transmissions. The point is, though, that the people are doing the pirate stations for a reason. Now, some of them may be just obnoxious human beings, and that's that's a whole issue on its own. But in other cases, they are doing so because there is a demand for this service. And they are providing a public service, but they simply cannot afford to go legit. I'm saying if this is the widespread problem that requires $11 million, why not apply the $11 million to helping these stations go legit? And again, reinvest and renew broadcasting, free broadcasting that people can listen to anonymously. And that's kind of important. Let's reinvest in that. Let's get our communities back on track with local media. This could be happening. I'd like to see it happen. All right.
Also another thing they could do if they're so big on these fees is, I just did some quick math. You can cut the fee in half with that $11 million. That's another thing you could do. Also, I wanted to correct something. I think I misspoke. People are letting me know. Apparently, a lot of people in chat have informed me that their ham radios actually do contain ham. And I'm sorry, I misspoke. And one person made the point that they make sure to clean their
Sounds
hands.
like GMOs to me.
I grow all my ham radios right here in the field.
I want to move on. Our colleague Kira reported yesterday about what's going on with Proposition 22, where you have in California where gig workers continue to be treated entirely as gig workers, even though they are laboring under a lot of rules set by their so-called client. Which is kind of bizarre, and that now there are several major grocery chains that are eliminating union delivery drivers and are moving to third-party services where people are freelancers, are gig workers, do not have the same level of protections, rights, benefits. Albertsons is now following the same path. I wanted to mention these are the sources on this are saying that this is not related to Proposition 22, although it should be noted that Albertsons' positions are non-union. I think Kira did a great job of explaining a lot of the concerns here. I want to go just a little bit further and point out that there is this kind of creeping crud here. Now, I myself am a freelancer. I work I'm entirely self-employed. But what that means is that I have the right to do things like set my own hours. I have a right to charge what I want. Now, my clients have a right to not pay it. They don't want to agree to pay that. That's fine. But I have a right to charge what I want. I also have a right to state how I want to be paid. If I want cash, if I want a check, if I want a direct deposit, PayPal, I can make all these decisions. And what is curious to me is that is not true for a lot of these gig workers. They are operating under rule after rule after rule. I've heard about one company, which will remain nameless, where if you get a bad review from somebody who may or may not be objective, you can very easily lose your position. With that company, you're dropped as a freelancer, as a gig worker. You have to accept the methods of payment that are being provided by the company. And while you do have certain levels of convenience, in some cases also, you're asked to be at certain places at certain times. You have a bunch of policies that you don't have when you are normally a freelancer or a self-employed person or a business owner. Now, I was actually seeing, so I'll make this point. This was actually happening here in Chicago in the 2000s. Cab drivers, again, independent contractors, they have a licensed public chauffeurs from the city of Chicago. All of a sudden, they were told that they must accept credit cards. Now, mind you, the city does not provide any benefits to cab drivers. But they were all of a sudden telling cab drivers, if you want to be a licensed taxi driver, you must accept credit cards, and that's it, or else you're in violation of ordinances. I opposed that at the time, even though I don't drive and I use cabs, it's a lot more convenient to pay with a credit card. The reality is that this kind of creeping crud from the powers that be, the mayors, and they wanted to make this more of a tourist haven, so they pushed and pushed and pushed to to force a cab driver to accept a certain method of payment. To my mind, that violates the idea of autonomy. It violates the notion of self-employment. You ought to be able to select or choose how you get paid. The city already sets rates for cabs, which again is, in my view, a bit problematic. If you're going to call somebody self-employed and there's no push to give cab drivers, health insurance, because we don't give people health insurance in this country.
And we desperately need it.
Yeah, just to jump in really quickly on this. Technically, and this is by all statistics, it's actually more dangerous to be a cab driver than to be a cop. So just remember that.
One of the most
goodness,
dangerous professions. Now, and I did talk to cab drivers once Uber started up. I did talk to some of the drivers who had been cab drivers, and they told me that actually they liked the peace of mind. They liked the fact that there was a name attached to whoever and a credit card that was attached to whoever got in their cabs, and that helped a lot. And we have some very interesting technology. It's been great for people who are disabled. It's been great for people who do not live in areas where there's a lot of people hailing cabs down the street. Rideshare technology did disrupt the taxi industry because the taxi industry in many ways was a dinosaur. It was very difficult to get a cab in the city of Chicago, whether you called or on the streets, unless you lived in downtown or a very affluent area. It was very difficult to do that. And what happened with Uber and Lyft has made it very easy to get a cab no matter where you were in the city. But the thing is, we have this amazing technology that's now been used to trap other people in a cycle of substandard employment. And at this point, we are also seeing what's going on with grocery delivery, food delivery, that you have a technology that could have been used to improve the plight of workers and to provide a more robust public service, and it is now trapping people into situations that at a time when people are desperate for work and are desperately attempting to pay their bills. They are finding themselves trapped and under fees and fines and the constant constantly trying to avoid getting that bad review, which could get you bumped off the system.
As
And no unemployment benefits, by the way.
as we're talking about this, I just can't help but think of a story that was shared to us on our live stream chat on how one of our viewers said one of my friends used to work for, I think it was Uber, and her friend had to deal with like straining hours, lack of pay, abuse, and very frightening situations. And the thing is, that's what a lot of Uber and Lyft drivers and all these, gig economy people are dealing with. And we don't have a fair system to protect our people. But yet, if you look at other countries, those systems are in place, and there's so little value on the worker here. People are not robots and machines. We need we need relief, and sadly, our government isn't giving it to us.
Yeah, so I would just throw onto all of this that it's very interesting how this works out because, like you said, Lainie, it's the way that position should work is I have the freedom to ask for what I ask for, and they have the freedom to turn it down. They have the freedom to ask for all these things. But if you're in a spot where you're basically being treated with the rule book of an employee at a business, then we have to just accept for what it is. It's not you're free to do whatever when, or we're starting up and we're doing this. It's I'm a multi-billion-dollar company and the amount I pay to labor is too big. That's what this is, and this is finding a way to make that happen. So advertise, because I remember when Lyft and Uber started, drivers were paid a lot more, quite a bit more, because it was a new service. They were trying to come in, take over the taxi industry, and do anything they could to get people to use the service. Because you're right, exactly at that point in time, like cabs were just like a nuisance almost to try and get them to even pick you up, try and help me spend my money, you know what I mean? But now that they've more or less taken out much of the cab industry through competition and accessibility and getting everyone to download their app, and that they have everyone's cards already, and there's this new convenience and everyone's expected, they're making it really hard to make money because, again, now labor cost is still too high, and we still need to make 3% more in the next 90 days than we did now.
And if you're doing an IPO, and you're trying to make money for your shareholders and your executives, it's really it's disturbing. But again, my thing is that, look, and this is my perspective, is that if you're self-employed, you're self-employed. If you are a gig worker and you're laboring under policy after policy, and you can't even determine how you get paid, I'm going to call into question just how self-employed you actually are. Yeah. All right. Moving on. Reuters is reporting that U.S. regulators have been ignoring workers' complaints about on-the-job safety this past year. Surprise, surprise. They use an example of a man worked for UPS, pointed out that the company was being very lax about public health issues, or health issues. It was reported to OSHA. The concerns were summarized in an email to company management, and they reviewed the response from UPS and closed the file. And this has been happening around the country. Now, what I'm going to say is this. This does not come as any shock to me, that the complete ineffectiveness of protecting workers when a federal agency, which does not have much of a commitment to to the safety and health of workers, and is generally considered to be more pro-business than anything, the fact that they are proving to be inadequate does not surprise me. In addition, I would point out that this is getting attention now, but there's a long-standing history of city, state, and federal agencies ignoring the plight of workers at just about every level. I think it's about 10 years ago or so, I was reading an article about wage theft, and that there were companies out there that were stealing, they were not paying their employees, they were stealing from their paychecks, and these were blatant cases of wage theft, which is completely against the law. It was being reported, but the labor agencies in these areas had only a handful of investigators. and it was impossible for them to follow up. So, in fact, unscrupulous employers knew exactly what they were doing and were going ahead employing people, not paying them properly, stealing their wages, and then thumbing their noses because they knew that the employees couldn't do anything about it.
The value of the worker in the United States, 0 to nothing. And again, our politicians have sold us down the river because for them, it's in their best interest to work with the CEOs and all the big corporations because, hey, forget the working class, even though it's the working class that helps build everything, that helps push this economy forward, but yet we're all still being left hanging to dry. And Congress is on vacation right now and won't come back in the session until January 20th.
They get paid vacations, don't they?
Yeah, they get paid
Very
vacations.
well.
They
They
also
healthcare.
everyone
They get their pension.
Hold on, Daniel. You mentioned
Pensions. Pensions.
Daniel.
They still exist.
Daniel, you mentioned healthcare, and I just want to remind everyone: in the recent bill that was passed, was at $600. Congress so graciously gave itself a boost in their healthcare,
Right, that's
so
right.
they get to be taken care of, while all of us are being left waiting outside. And we wonder why what the madness that took place yesterday. That's not going to be a fluke. Be prepared to see something like that again. It's just be ready, folks, because this is madness.
Indeed it is. All right. I'm going to we're running out of time here, so I'm going to address a couple of stories here, skip over some stuff. We'll talk about it next week. The United States Department of Agriculture has announced a final rule regarding the enhancement of employment and training opportunities for food stamps recipients. The title of this press release: USDA continues to move SNAP participants forward. Yeah, right off a cliff.
What can we do to take money from those rich SNAP benefit people?
I don't have a problem with employment and training programs. But at this particular point, we've got a country in chaos. We have a public health emergency. We have people who are being evicted. We have people who are losing family members and friends, who are being shuffled around, and they want to enhance the education and training programs, and including in one point, and we're going to talk more about this on future shows, but one of these things is to require supervised employment searches, which means that a person is not just expected to look for a job, but they're expected to continuously record their efforts to look for a job, and that has to be submitted through email or online or in some way or another. It's at a time when people are having their internet cut off, at a time when people are having to move because they're being evicted. At this point, we're talking about the real possibility in some cases of people losing their food benefits because they don't have internet access, or they have to move and don't get their forms in on time showing that they've called up a number of employers.
Okay. Wow. Again,
This is not the time for this. All right. Now, I'm all about providing genuine job assistance, training, and that sort of thing. But I want to remind everybody, number one, that most people who are on food stamps are disabled, elderly, or school-age kids. Most of the people who don't fall in those categories do have a job of some sort. They are working. I would also like to point out that every penny of the money that people get in their food stamps goes right back into the economy. I would also note that the biggest lobbyists against restricting access to food stamps historically has been major grocery chains, because they know the value of getting people into their stores to use their food stamp benefits.
farmers need the SNAP benefits too.
They do. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I'll be looking more at about how these rules are implemented. The one thing about rules, they can put a rule out there, how the states choose to implement them, the ways in which they do that, we'll see what happens there. But I have some real concerns. This is not the time for this. If we're looking at job training, yes, but if we're talking about further gatekeeping on getting people access to the food that they need, we have a real problem. Finally, I'm going to end with my series series on the National Consumer Law Center's 2021 Consumer Protection Federal Priorities. This week, the priority is credit, namely limiting interest rates to stop predatory lending. I think it was last year that I did a show on predatory lending and how the interest rates on predatory lending, could be ridiculously high, and these lenders were using these interest rates, and that the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau was not taking adequate steps against this sort of thing. And I also noted that usury has long been the scourge of world religions. There's nothing progressive or particularly new about this, and that, say, when the country started, there were significant interest caps in this country. National Consumer Law Center is asking for a 36% interest cap, which I think is still way too high. But what they're noting is that nobody benefits when people get into a debt trap except for the tiny number of people who are running the banks or the lenders. Again, this is something, the idea of restricting usury, restricting interest rates, this is nothing new. This is something that happened in this country at its founding and that has slowly been loosened up over time. And as a result, you have people getting into debt traps, and then they have to file for bankruptcy if they can afford a bankruptcy, which can cost $2,500 to $3,000, which they have to pay up front. If you want to talk about why a permanent underclass gets formed, this is one, not the only one, but this is one of those reasons. So I think that this is something that we should all be aware of. We should be looking at how the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau hopefully will be revitalized in its mission, and that there will be efforts made to examine interest rates being offered by some lenders in this country, and to control those lending practices so that people are not essentially in a form of indentured servitude for the rest of their life.
Well said, Lainie. Well said. And again, I'm so glad that we have this program so that we can inform our viewers and subscribers, because we do talk a lot about news and current events and a lot of our stories that we want to continue pushing forward on. But I think it's very important that we bring up this stuff as well, because a lot of media outlets are not covering this, and there's a lot of people that don't truly understand what's at play, and this is fundamentally important. So once again, outstanding reporting. Glad to have you in the studio too.
Glad to be back.
All right. So with that being said, Heartlands Media is live every Monday through Friday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time, live on Rockfin every Monday and Wednesday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Check out our fun channel, Chicago Reacts. Follow us on Twitter. Join our Discord page. And with that being said, shout out to all the people that's been joining us. Shout out to Lainie, Daniel, our tech pre-seasons to see your face. Shout out to all our moderators in the live stream chat.
Absolutely.
Peace to you guys. And I guess let's all do what we can to build a better future.
We'll see you tomorrow.